West Africa is poised to become a new destination for millions of people of African descent living in Western nations. There is a great deal of curiosity and excitement about Benin's groundbreaking legislative action to allow descendants of enslaved Africans to apply for Beninese citizenship. By implementing this novel approach, the African diaspora and the continent hope to strengthen their ties and right historical wrongs. In today's video, we will tell you more about this approach and why the president of Benin made this decision. But before we continue, encourage us to keep making videos like this for you by liking this and subscribing to the new Tourist channel. Citizens of Western nations with African heritage are set to take advantage of new legislation from the West African nation of Benin that grants Beninese nationality to the descendants of enslaved Africans. Any person who, according to their genealogy, has an African, sub-Saharan ancestor deported as part of the slave trade will be able to apply for a Beninese passport under the terms of the law, which President Patrice Talon of Benin is expected to approve. The act, which was approved by Parliament on July 30, is Benin's most recent effort to bring attention to its African cultural and historical heritage. Millions of Africans sold into slavery left the coasts of West Africa, many of them from the beaches of Benin, and traveled to various Western nations. Many of them are now saying they will make use of this opportunity to stay close to the homeland. Others say that the government of Benin is doing something extraordinary to bring them closer to their brothers. Benin's officials say the law responds to the difficulties of the search for identity faced by Afro-descendants. Benin's decision to grant citizenship represents a significant step towards acknowledging the atrocities of the transatlantic slave trade. Benin offers this invitation as a symbolic gesture of reparation for the great hardship millions of Africans and their descendants have endured. This deed may help heal past wounds and promote a sense of justice. The newcomers' varied experiences and backgrounds have the potential to greatly enhance Benin's cultural fabric. It will bring in many viewpoints, customs, and creative expressions to create a society that is more dynamic and welcoming. This cross-cultural interaction will foster originality, inventiveness, and a greater understanding of cultural diversity. These newcomers will benefit Benin with their investments, talents, and knowledge. Their professional knowledge and spirit of entrepreneurship can support economic expansion. Remittances from those who maintain ties with their countries of origin will also boost the local economy. This initiative can lead to increased collaboration in areas such as trade, education, and cultural exchange. A sense of belonging and shared heritage will be cultivated, strengthening the bond between Benin and its global community. Of course, there are also meant to be disadvantages to this approach. There may be a lot of difficulties in integrating an extensive number of new residents into Benin's society and economy. Language, cultural, and economic barriers might act as roadblocks to social cohesiveness. Careful planning and investment will be needed to ensure that new citizens have access to housing, education, and employment opportunities. Benin may have resource constraints in meeting the demands of an expanding population for infrastructure, healthcare, and education. To meet the rising demand for public services, the government will have to set aside more money. Resources from other development objectives may be diverted as a result of this. The process of verifying eligibility and issuing citizenship to descendants of enslaved Africans will definitely be complex and time-consuming. Note that President Patrice Talon's decision to grant Beninese nationality to the descendants of enslaved Africans comes as Western countries are protesting for immigrants to leave their country. The UK is facing the worst disorder it has seen in more than a decade, after outbreaks of far-right, anti-immigrant violence swept the country. Protests began late last month, sparked by an anti-immigrant misinformation campaign that stoked outrage over a stabbing attack that left 3 children dead in Southport, northern England. Over the weekend, rioters in other towns vandalized public buildings and engaged in violent altercations with police, throwing objects at officers and destroying their vehicles. Meanwhile, groups of far-right agitators set fire to hotels that housed asylum seekers in 2 cities, trapping and terrifying those inside. Anti-immigration riots broke out in several UK towns and cities on Sunday, including Middlesbrough, England. Hundreds of people have been arrested so far, and some 6,000 specialist officers have been mobilized as police prepare for more potential riots. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer attempted to reassure communities after presiding over a second meeting of the government's Emergency Response Committee. He stated that rioters are likely to be dealt with within a week and warned that anyone participating with them will feel the full force of the law. About 100 people have already been charged by authorities in connection with the violent rioting. Days before the riots, the locations and timings were announced on social media and messaging apps like WhatsApp and Telegram. As a result, social media companies were forced to participate in the national conversation in Britain regarding how to address the violence. People from all political stripes have attacked Elon Musk's X platform for permitting far-right leaders like Tommy Robinson to return to the platform. Robinson has written several posts supporting protests while denouncing violent attacks. In January, around 250,000 people turned out across Germany in protests against the far-right Alternative for Germany. The wave of mobilization against the far-right party was sparked by a January 10 report by an investigative outlet, which revealed that the Alternative for Germany members had discussed the expulsion of immigrants and non-assimilated citizens at a meeting with extremists. About 35,000 people carrying posters, like Nazis Out, also turned up in the northern city of Hanover. A similar thing too happened in France as tens of thousands of people marched across France on January 21 to put pressure on the French government ahead of an expected ruling by France's Constitutional Council over a highly contested immigration law. The law created a distinction between foreigners who are in a situation of employment and those who are not, with effects on what social benefits they can receive and when. We should note that Benin is not the first country to do this in Africa. In 2020, after the incident with George Floyd, Ghana told African Americans to come home. Ghana has long courted the descendants of enslaved Africans to return home as tourists or permanently resettle. Many believed that the growing outcry against racial injustice and the massive rallies that occurred throughout the US and Europe would be the turning point in racial relations. Meanwhile, Ghana's government hoped to capitalize on the wave of introspection and defiance to bolster its message to African Americans living abroad. In the US, there is a possibility that Donald Trump will win the elections. It is said that Trump does not like Black Americans. He sees them as thieves. The prospect of Donald Trump returning to the White House after the US presidential election in November has some Africans worried about possibly stricter migration policies and less cooperation with the continent. Trump will give up on traditional development assistance and switch to a private sector-led model, leaving it up to African countries to implement market-based economic reforms. This strategy runs the risk of escalating inequality and depriving those who are needy of vital assistance. It's undeniable that the USA is a modern powerhouse, a first-class country where advanced infrastructure and technological prowess are the norms. However, in an ironic twist of reality, numerous African nations emerge as safer havens compared to their Western counterparts. Contrary to popular assumption, many African nations have become safety beacons, surpassing the US in several areas. Gun deaths in the United States and many other countries paint a harrowing picture of a nation grappling with a unique epidemic. The United Kingdom, particularly London, has witnessed a worrying trend in violent crimes, notably knife offenses. According to Statista.com, London experienced a rise in knife crime, reaching approximately 12,786 offenses in 2022-2023. This figure was the highest since 2019/20, when the number stood at 15,928. The recent surge in gang violence in Sweden, particularly in September 2023, highlights a growing concern about safety and security in the country. We can see that Africans are not safe out there too. So, Benin's groundbreaking legislative action to allow descendants of enslaved Africans to apply for Beninese citizenship is a very promising step. Careful planning, inclusive policies, and the capacity to maximize potential benefits while reducing risks will be necessary for this project to succeed. In the end, Benin's decision marks a new chapter in the ongoing narrative of the African diaspora and the continent's quest for unity and development. Do you think Benin will be able to accommodate these people if they decide to come back home? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the new tourist channel. Turn on notifications too so you get notified whenever we upload videos like this. Thanks for watching and see you in our next video.